Well, welcome to another episode of Young Guns. As always, we have Lloyd Joe Rudnicki. Want to talk about the crazy week we had last week.
How was it crazy, Joe, for you? I mean, it wasn't the election, was it?
It just depends on the day, but a lot of people said they lost sleep. That's just a normal night for me. I'm definitely a night owl.
Yeah, we're so used to that, right?
So, but moving forward, obviously we have what we believe will be our president, Joe Biden. I know Donald Trump is going and suing different, states, things like that.
So you can go all the way up to the Supreme Court, most likely.
Absolutely. So we definitely had some time to watch that unfold, but we want to give you the 4 tips that we should leave you with if there is and probably will be a Joe Biden presidency. So the first thing we want to start with is the big T word, right? Taxes. Yep. Nobody likes paying taxes. And unfortunately, we are in a very low tax environment historically.
Since World War I, the lowest since World War I. So.
Absolutely. And it doesn't feel that way. But
the thing is, people get offended sometimes when you say taxes are going to go up because Joe Biden's elected. But inherently, no matter who was elected, most likely the direction of taxes over the next decade was going to be up anyway because we are in such a low tax environment right now.
Yep.
I mean, corporate taxes are low, marginal taxes are low, payroll taxes, everything is kind of low right now, and it kind of doesn't feel that way because nobody likes being taxed, right? We all hate paying the man, paying Uncle Sam because at the end of the day he's the one getting our money. But taxes were going up anyway. It's not really even debated. It's not inherently because of even Joe Biden, even though that's what he's pushing for in his policies. It was going to happen anyway.
Right, yeah, our silent business partner in retirement, right?
Yeah, Sam.
Uncle Sam. But the thing we need to realize is that Joe has been telling everybody that he is not going to raise taxes on those that aren't making above $400,000. And what I need everyone out there to realize is that this isn't completely true. Okay, so when you look at your taxes, there are different tax brackets, and you are taxed at that portion or 12% or what have you until you get into the next bracket and you go up from there. So you're not taxed all at whatever your marginal tax bracket is. You're getting taxed at each marginal tax bracket along the way. When he moves these tax brackets around, it is going to create different margins. There's going to be different windows for how much you make. So this isn't entirely true. Right. You probably will feel an increase in taxes.
And the other thing you want to consider is the payroll taxes, right? So what does payroll taxes fund? Social Security. What's one of the biggest things that Joe Biden is going for? Is increasing Social Security benefits, especially those receiving the lower benefits, and trying to up those benefits as a whole for everybody who is receiving Social Security, but really for those who aren't collecting as much from Social Security as the top brackets for Social Security. But my point is, when it comes down to these payroll taxes, you inherently have to increase those payroll taxes to fund Social Security. There's 2 places where Social Security money comes from: payroll taxes, and then the other part, 24% of it, comes from the trust fund. So 76% comes from payroll taxes, 24% comes from the trust fund. Well, guess what? That trust fund is going to run out here in about 10 years. Yep. And not only are we getting closer to that number, but that number is getting closer to us.
Right. It used to be 2034. Now they're saying 2031, 2030. So they don't know. They just know it's happening soon.
But
right?
My point is that's going to go away. So inherently our payroll taxes are going to go up anyway in the next 10 years because that's going to have to fund the other part of Social Security.
Yep.
Or Social Security benefits are going to get cut, and obviously Biden will not want that. So he's really going to be taxing corporations and employees because payroll tax comes from both the company and the employee. So even though he says nobody's going to be taxed more under $400,000, that's not true. Everybody is going to be taxed a little bit more in almost every bracket, really. And it comes down to the middle class. Is really what it really comes down to. Middle class is always the guy that gets hurt.
And moving away from the middle class, going more into that upper class, another big area that's going to be changed, or that he wants changed, is going to be the capital gains tax. So if you have a long-term capital gain in your non-qualified, your just regular cash account, your regular investment account, at this time, the highest that there can be is 20%, and you have to be making about $500,000 a year. So it doesn't affect most people. It is definitely affecting that upper class, but he wants to move that from that 20% up to 39%. And what's that going to do? That's going to create that trickle-down effect.
Correct. It's also going to trickle down to the financial markets really as well, because when you implement this capital gains tax, there's people who, the incentive to buy stocks is a lot less, right? Because if you're buying stocks and you're paying 40% to, again, Uncle Sam, there's less incentive to own stocks or even put your money at risk, right? Because you're putting your money at risk by buying equities, right? So there's something to keep in mind as well, is that the financial markets might be cut down a lot just by that simple fact of the capital gains tax, not even talking about corporate taxes.
And one caveat I want to put out there is that there wasn't a blue wave. So if the Senate was switched, it would create a lot more of these issues. A lot of these tax plans would go in seamlessly, but there will be some pushback. So everything that we're talking about, we want you to be ready for. We want you to have a plan. But again, they may not be implemented when it comes down to the checks and balances.
Right. I mean, the Senate remaining Republican, I mean, that definitely has those checks and balances. And it's going to make those policies not as extreme, most likely. Definitely, if there was that blue wave and it was a Democratic Senate, definitely we could get pretty extreme. We would definitely see more of an effect, especially the initial reaction on the financial markets. The initial reaction was really up. The financial markets gained on the certainty of the vaccine and Joe Biden winning the presidency, and they really didn't care about all this uncertainty, right?
Yep.
If we did have a blue Senate, Democratic Senate, and again, it's not even about politics, it's just the simple fact that they would have been more extreme in their policies. It could be more extreme, and that definitely wouldn't have related well to Wall Street and the valuations on many of these companies.
Right. So moving away from taxes, which is our number one, number two is going to be the stimulus.
Right.
So
when it comes down to stimulus, another thing to consider is no money is free. We keep on hearing of, free money, or we're going to get these $1,200 stimulus checks. Well, definitely with a Biden presidency, you should be expecting the likelihood of another stimulus package, because he's going to be pushing for that. Again, it comes down to the Senate. Probably is going to be pushing back and trying not to print as much money and giving out as much money.
Right. So where are we getting all this money?
Right. Exactly. We're just printing it and giving it out. Which again, it's not free. We're gonna pay for this down the road through our number one thing that we talked about, and that's taxes. We're gonna pay for it through taxes. But again, you should be keeping up. Understand that the likelihood of receiving something probably is raised now.
And another place that's gonna have a rise is going to be inflation.
Yep.
So it's right, supply and demand. So if we put more money out there, everybody has more money. Now the cost of goods are going to go up because there's more money in the system. So artificially down the road, we are going to create some inflation as well, which can be devastating in some circumstances.
Well, it also can devalue the dollar, right?
Yep.
So if it devalues the dollar, if we print too much money and there's too much money out there in supply, when that money becomes devalued, inherently everything has to increase in value, if that makes sense, other than the dollar, right?
Yep.
Because if the dollar is worth less, then everything else has to be worth higher in dollar terms.
All right, so now we got taxes, we got our stimulus. What else should investors
well, I mean, I think it's not
for?
really debated that a shutdown is more likely given a Biden presidency. When it came down to the first round, it wasn't on Trump or the federal government. It was on the governors of the states to decide if they were shutting down or not. But definitely, Biden's already been talking about a national mask mandate. So I think that's going to be the first round, not initially just a shutdown. But I think if the mask mandate, if we continue to see numbers rising, I think definitely there could be a shutdown on the table where he might try to force the governors to shut down. And again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying the likelihood has increased compared to Trump.
Right.
And I think the financial markets aren't really pricing that in, given the circumstances where the markets are at right now. If that did happen, I think we'll see what happened the first time, where technology stocks might kind of hold up better than everyone else because of this work from home mentality, or the infrastructure build up technology to support what comes with the shutdown. But I think it's going to have much more of a trickle down effect this time, because we saw many small businesses shut down, some of them permanently, but a lot of them still survived. A lot of them were okay, and they're going to be okay. If we shut down again, they're not going to be okay this time around.
They don't have those cash reserves.
They don't have anything in reserves anymore. It's all depleted. So now, if they shut down again, I think Wall Street is going to feel much more pain than we saw on Main Street, or like we saw on Main Street the first time around.
Yeah, so I've heard Joe Biden say that we cannot work on our economy until we fix the coronavirus problem. So definitely in his view, that is going to be up and beyond the economy and what happens to it. So it's just something that we do need to be aware of and something that investors should be looking out for. And the last issue of our last point of the 4 points we're pointing out is that sector rotation is most likely and probably already starting to happen.
We saw S&P 500 up 5%, this past Monday. And then we sold off intraday and it was only up 1%. But the NASDAQ was underperforming the entire day.
Right.
What does that tell you? That means technology is not doing very well compared to the value stocks that haven't been doing well, but now they're doing pretty well, right?
Yep.
So we've kind of seen this whole sector rotation because when you take a look at it, if all the things we talked about, taxes, capital gains, the sectors that have grown the most are going to be impacted the most by these changes because if taxes are raised, for example, corporate taxes, tech stocks margins are going to be decreased a ton. So we're starting to see these multiple compression in sectors like technology, which means inherently people are selling technology and going to other sectors. That doesn't mean don't buy technology. I still think technology and healthcare are the strongest sectors to own.
Right.
But we're starting to see this rotation of people buying and selling certain things.
Oh, I mean, come on, let's be honest with ourselves. Value has been a complete dumpster fire. I mean, it's been a dog for forever now. Technology was where to be, growth was where you wanted to be. But if we looked at Monday, like Luke just talked about, all of your value stocks were killing it.
Yeah.
Especially if you looked at your small cap value stocks, they were up over 5%.
Yeah.
But again, if you look at the NASDAQ, we're looking at those heavy tech names, those are down 2%. So we're seeing this kind of disconnect, this switch per se. And then moving even further into these value stocks, you're looking at a lot of things that were going to be travel or, vaccine positive related, right?
The reopening trade is what we call it, right?
Yep.
So, cruise lines, airlines, those kind of stocks, since we got this positive news about the vaccine, outside of, talking about Biden coming in as president, vaccine news has been the most recent kind of buzz. On Monday, we saw that Pfizer came out and said that their vaccine was 90% effective. But one thing to consider is only 90 people were in that trial, right? So it's hard to kind of come to the conclusions when you only have 90 people in the trial. I hope there is a vaccine. I hope it's 100% effective. But that's why the market's moving, though, is because it's kind of, we're thinking if the vaccine is effective, and then some of these stocks that have not performed very well, that people don't want to own, like cruise lines and airlines, are going to perform well because everybody's going to go back to normal.
Look at AMC. I mean, I don't know about you, but movie theaters have changed forever.
I don't go to the
they will never be the same. AMC was up 50% on Monday.
Yeah.
So that is just, if you look at the reality of what's going on that Monday, it is a very crazy change. And then moving even further into the sectors, you're going to want to find sectors that Joe Biden's policies are going to favor. Cannabis, for example. Yeah. If you look at, I know Aurora Farms was up big time. Cannabis in general is going to do better just because of that deregulation from the policies. Also, companies that are benefited by China.
Yep. Renewable energy too.
Yeah, renewable energy. These are the sectors you're going to want to be looking for because we know that Trump was at odds with China. He was butting heads as hard as he could. Biden is not going to feel the same way. He's going to loosen up on that regulation, which is going to help those companies that have that China exposure. So things like, cannabis, things like China exposure companies, things like renewable energy.
Infrastructure is one as well. As we're pumping money into the whole system and pumping money into the infrastructure, he's going to be wanting to kind of fund those kind of projects. So those are certain sectors that you can watch out for.
Yep.
And again, why we're seeing that rotation, because you just have to think, sometimes in the stock market, you just have to think outside the box about what's going to happen when one event happens. So Biden gets elected, what is he going to be pushing for? What kind of sectors are going to be benefited underneath him? And that's what we're seeing, that sector rotation right now.
Yeah, so I think one of the main points we always make is you always got to look at a top-down approach. So you have to figure out your goal. which, maybe retirement, maybe having X amount of dollars, what have you. Then you look at your strategies, your investment strategies, your tax strategies. Then you look at your tools being your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds. You can't start at the bottom. So you have to realize what's going on in the economy from a top point of view and then work your way through that process.
But the thing is, you started from the top there, but you can start from the top with the stocks, because then you find out what stocks, if you need an 80-20 allocation, 80% stocks, 20% bonds, then you need to find out what in the stock portfolio do you need. So that's when you start with a top-down approach. What sectors should I be in? Out of those sectors, what are the best stocks to be in those sectors and why? If you can tell yourself why, you should always have a why. You shouldn't own things blindly, right? If you own maybe Tesla, you might say, oh, I like the car. I might not be a good reason to own the stock, but at least you have a why. You should always have a why and a rhyme to your reason when you're buying stocks.
Looking maybe for that next catalyst. So who's going to come out with that next best thing that's just going to drive them further? But wrapping this up, so we gave you 4 things you want to look for. So 1 being taxes. 2 is going to be our stimulus. What's number 3?
Shutdown.
Our shutdown, right? And 4 being our sector rotation and what sectors we should be looking out for. So if you have questions, if you have concerns about how your portfolio is set up moving into a Joe Biden presidency, we'd be more than happy to do an analysis, give you any recommendations. Just leave a comment below. If you found this useful, give us a like, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Again, thank you for tuning in to the Young Guns.